What's going on, world? DS1 Ross. I'm back. Welcome back to Sheep Stay Sleep, fam. This is the Black History Month series 2018. Shout out to everybody who's been supporting the platform Sheep Stay Sleep TV and always showing love to your host, DS1 Ross. Very much appreciated. Tonight, coming back with our second historians. I'm going to say historians. Called the Harlem Hellfighters. The Harlem Hellfighters. Number 2 out of the 10 Black historians for our melanated youth for 2018 and Black History Month. So tonight we're going to get into the Harlem Hellfighters, family. Shout out to everybody that's coming through. Make sure y'all hit that like button. Make sure y'all share this. So tonight, like I said, we're going to get into number 2, which is the Harlem Hellfighters, family. I appreciate y'all for rocking with your brother DS1 Ross, as always. And I appreciate y'all tuning into the Black History Month 2018. Make sure y'all share this. Make sure y'all let y'all children hear this. Because this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to inform us, just in case, because when I do this series, I learn a lot myself, So I definitely want to inform the parents, but this is also for our children. This is mainly what I do it for. You can also check out the Black History Month series of last year, 2017. I got my 10 freedom fighters up there. So whenever y'all got the time, family, and just let your children hear some of these historians. Let them get to know them, and let them get to know Black history from another perspective. Just not from the public school perspective. That's what made me come up with this series, because usually during Black History Month in school, they talk about the same people. And those people were great too. But we have a lot of other historians that their stories untold. So that's why I'm here, to speak for the ones who people are afraid to talk about, or people who don't know about. So once again, I appreciate y'all's support. So let's get into the Harlem Hellfighters. This is an article I found by James Clark, April 20th of last year. He wrote this article, and this is about the untold stories of the Harlem Hellfighters of World War I. So let's get into it, family. This year marks the centennial of the United States entrance into World War I, a conflict that claimed millions of lives, redrew the world map, and changed war forever. Countless stories of heroism and hardship emerged from the fight in Western Europe, and many of them involve the 369th Infantry Regiment. As y'all can see, all these brothers were melanated. 369th Infantry, family. It says, the first Black American infantry regiment to fight in World War I, the 369th spent more time in the trenches and under fire, 191 days, than any other U.S. unit. A National Guard regiment, the 369th, recruited out of New York City in large numbers, and German soldiers who witnessed their battlefield prowess quickly dubbed them the Harlem Hellfighters. So just in case y'all don't know, family, Harlem is in New York City. Just in case y'all didn't know, Harlem is in New York City. So this regiment came directly out of New York City, the Harlem Hellfighters. Let's continue. Though their actions didn't immediately alter the fight for equal rights at home, the regiment's wartime service heightened the sense that sending African Americans to fight for democracy abroad, while racial segregation and inequality went unchecked at home. So as y'all can see, even though they went around the world and fought for democracy, they still was dealing with racism. They still was dealing with racism right at home in America. So even though they went abroad to fight for America and for what quote unquote America stood for, they still dealt with racism, segregation, biasness, prejudice right at home, right where they were from. Even the Harlem Hellfighters rifles were segregated. Let's get into this. You see, so just from that title alone, family, you can see that these guys were up. They were against a lot. They were up against a lot. You know, not only were they segregated for being black, but they even segregated their weapons. So it was almost like they were fighting a losing battle. But let's get into the story because it's very, very interesting. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I appreciate it. By the time the United States joined the war, its allies were in desperate need of reinforcement. The men of the 369th were sent to assist the French Army's 16th Division on the Western Front in the spring of 1918. It was a strategic necessity. The Western Front desperately needed reinforcement, but it was also motivated by racial bias. Many white American soldiers refused to fight along the side their black counterparts. The decision to hand off command of the 369th to the French started with some small arms complications. After the regiment's limited combat training stateside, they were issued Springfield rifles, which they had to give back after being assigned to the French, along with almost every bit of American gear they had, including helmets, army greens, and food rations, according to author Stephen J. Harris' book Harlem Hellfighters. So, as y'all can see, they was dealing with so much oppression, even though they were fighting for America. You know, not only did they take their guns, they took their gear. And this is in the middle of a war. So as you can see, black people was always up against oppression. We always had to fight against racism and hatred. even when you're fighting for America. That's some interesting stuff, man. In place of their Springfields, the 369th received the French Lebel rifle, which had a reputation for reliability, but was temperamental and annoying to load. Some members of the regiment, like Captain Hamilton Fish, saw the exchange as a bit of a disappointment. Their Lebels were nowhere near as good as our Springfields, Fish said in Harris's account. The French, you see, were great believers in the hand grenade. Their rifle seemed more or less something to put a bayonet on. Number two, that's okay. The Hellfighters had Black Death and bolo knives. And look at this brother. This brother looked militant. Look at his face. He not smiling at all. While standing, while standing watch in the Oregon forest in May 1918, two 369th soldiers, Private Henry Johnson and Private Needham Roberts, were attacked by a 12-man German raiding party. Outnumbered and under fire, the two men fought off the initial attack. But after Roberts was badly wounded, Johnson remained with the injured soldier to keep him from being taken prisoner by the Germans. Wounded, advancing on the enemy with only a bolo knife, Johnson killed one German soldier by stabbing him in the head and forced the survivors to retreat. Johnson's actions earned him national acclaim, as well as the incredible metal nickname Black Death. Johnson and Roberts were among the first Americans to be presented the Croix de Guerre for valor by the French military. And in 2015, Johnson became the second African American to receive the Medal of Honor for actions during World War I, presented by President Barack Obama during a posthumous award ceremony at the White House. So as you can see, we overcame that. Them brothers overcame what they had to deal with. They had bullshit guns. They had no gear. And they were being attacked. And as you can see, they still came out on top in this situation. They made those guys flee by using a bolo knife. And one thing that's very important that we need to point out, family, is that he didn't leave his partner because his partner was injured. He didn't leave him. That's brotherhood. That's unity. So I must stress that, family. I must stress that. Number three, when not kicking ass in Marnin, bebop and Hellfighters helped bring jazz to Europe. So again, we were trendsetting. We was bringing our culture all over the world. As you can see, wherever we went, we brought our culture. And it influenced the world. So these brothers helped bring jazz to Europe. Because of course, a lot of the jazz came out of Harlem. Let's continue. Among the Hellfighters, many distinguished members was James Reese, Europe, a renowned ragtime and jazz musician who served as both an infantry officer and the regiment's band leader. These guys was multi-talented. Europe had a hard time finding enough trained recruits to play in the regimental banned in New York. So he traveled to Puerto Rico and enlisted more than a dozen black instrumentalists from the island to round out his band, according to the New York Folklore Society. The band, which recruited up to a third of their members from Puerto Rico, introduced European audiences, particularly in France, to live jazz music and influenced the careers of notable musicians on both sides of the Atlantic, according to the society. Musicians like Europe continue to play while serving abroad, touring thousands of miles to perform, according to Rob Pascal, director of the U.S. Army's Military History Institute. So, as you can see, while they were at war, going from place to place, these brothers had time to entertain themselves. They still entertained themselves, and they entertained the people in the countries that they were going to. This is why we got to love ourselves, family. This is why. And this is why I started doing this series last year, because we need to show our children the reason why they should love themselves as being black people. Don't be ashamed. Don't listen to what the media say, because we have history. We have a very large history. It's more than just Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey. It's more than that. It's more than that. This exposure to a deeply American style of music, jazz, had a profound and lasting impact in France. So as you can see, they basically created the music scene in France. Black men who fought in World War I, black men from Harlem, New York. So you can thank them for the music scene that we have in France today. And then you wonder why a lot of our hip hop artists, when they do international tours, they have to go to France. You see? It has also produced a corpse of Latin and black musicians who found themselves in demand in New York after their service. So as you can see, after a lot of these brothers got out of the military, the army and stuff like that, people were requesting them to come and play music. So these guys had a whole nother career outside of serving in the army. While concrete proof is impossible to produce in these sorts of social environments, Pascal writes, it is likely that the regiment's band performances in 1917 and 1918 had much to do with creating or accelerating the French taste for American jazz, a phenomenon that has persisted until this day. You see, so as I say, they help shape and mold the music taste and the music business and industry that's in France today. The Harlem Hellfighters, black men. Number 4, to fight alongside the French, they had to learn to fight like the French. Badass. By the time the 369th made its way into the trenches, each member of the regiment was paired off with a French counterpart, a stab at forced harmony that would have been unthinkable in the American military at that time. So based on what this brother here did, Private Henry Johnson, what he did with that bolo knife, the French was forced to get out of their feelings and hating them because they were black and realize that they needed us. You see? A stab at forced harmony that would have been unthinkable in the American military at the time. The pairs then trained intensely for 3 weeks near the front and amid sporadic attacks by German aircraft and artillery. The Hellfighters quickly learned the tricks of trench warfare. From their French counterparts, according to author Peter N. Nielsen's A More Unbending Battle, the Harlem Hellfighters struggled for freedom in World War I and equality at home. Also notice something, family, before I continue. A lot of people wrote books about the Harlem Hellfighters, as y'all can see. That's what y'all see in this blue here. These are references. Those tricks included cutting off the tails of their overcoats so they wouldn't get weighed down with mud and water, carving grooves in the mud wall with shovels to make it easier to climb out of the trenches, or curling up balls of barbed wire during the day so that at night they could be carried with ease and then quickly unfurled to reinforce the defenses. So these brothers came up with a war strategy. They came up with a war strategy because remember, they had bullshit guns. They was dealing with knives. They didn't have good guns. They didn't have the proper army gear or anything. So they did what black people always did, and that's make do with what they had and made it happen. See? So we could stop letting our kids be so quick to give up. Make do with what you have. We've been doing that long time. Knowing when to take cover or when to be wary of a gas attack, i.e., when the wind was blowing toward your lines, all had to become second nature for the men who survived a half a year in the trenches. So these dudes was in the trenches for 6 months. 6 months straight. 5. Even in death, the Hellfighters made French friends for life. You see? They loved us. The French loved us. The French loved us. And according to a lot of my friends that went to the army and the military, they still say that to this day. That a lot of French women, a lot of European women, period, love black men. They love black men. Many of the US French pairs of soldiers ended up cementing permanent bonds. George Cuffey, a young soldier in the 369th, became close to his French counterpart, Ruby Garnett, who taught him to speak French, a fact that Cuffey's wife, kids, and grandkids were unaware of for decades, until one night when they caught him parceling Francais in his sleep. So they didn't know that he knew how to speak French until he was asleep one night. He was talking in his sleep and he was speaking in French. When asked why he never spoke French around his family before, his sardonic reply was, "None of you all speak French. Why should I waste my time talking it to you?" Cuffy's great-nephew Glenn Jones told Task and Purpose. One night in the days before the Musi Argonne offensive, a massive battle that stretched along the Western Front and lasted 47 days, ending on Armistice Day, Garnett took Cuffy's place on watch. Tragically, Garnett was killed in an unexpected attack, and his death stayed with Cuffy for years. So he was hurt by Garnett's death, even though he was a Frenchman. They were friends. He loved Garnett. You see, they were buddies, so they'd be together all the time in the trenches. Jones said. Cuffy vowed to name his first child after Garnett, and he did, naming his eldest daughter Ruby Garnett after his fallen friend. If they hadn't traded watches, Cuffy's great nephew said he felt it would have been him and not Ruby. So as y'all could see, we didn't hate people. We didn't hate nobody. Even though we dealt with a lot of hatred, even though we were segregated, even though people were prejudiced to us, it's just not in our nature to hate people. It's just not. No matter how much oppression we dealt with, there's a lot of people, a lot of our historians that didn't teach hate and didn't preach hate. Because as you can see, what overcame their racial biasness towards the Hellfighters was love. And that love came through not only them going to war, but through music. You see? So we're an ill people, family. And this is why we can't be preaching hate. Because that's not in our history to preach hate. That's not in our hearts to preach hate. So I'm going to go to one more article. Then I'm going to take a look at the chat and give some shout outs. I appreciate y'all for tuning in tonight, family. I really, really do. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Now, this is something right here that you can just, this is basically like a summary for your children. If you just want to give them some facts. Harlem Hellfighters facts. Summary and definition. Summary of the Harlem Hellfighters. So if y'all want to keep it short, y'all could check this this article out. It's from AmericanHistorama.org. Summary and definition. When America entered World War I on April 6, 1917, there were 4 all-black regiments. 4 all-black regiments. You see? So we was even masters of war. Us, not them, us. Okay? There were 4 all-black regiments consisting of the 9th and 10th Cavalry and the 24th and 25th Infantry. In 1917, the U.S. War Department created the 92nd and 93rd Divisions, primarily as black combat units. One particular regiment, the 369th Infantry, later known as the Harlem Hellfighters, heroically fought on the front lines and received the French Croix de Guerre. Their story is recounted in a 2014 novel by Max Brooks and a movie version of the novel produced by Will Smith. You need to check that out. Harlem Hellfighters and African Americans in World War One. Woodrow Wilson was the 28th American president who served in office from March 4th, 1913 to March 4th, 1921. One of the important events during his presidency was the American entry into World War One and the role of African Americans in World War One and the Harlem Hellfighters. Now, this is a fact sheet for your children. Who were the Harlem Hellfighters? The Harlem Hellfighters were a regiment in the 369th Infantry who heroically fought on the front lines, and the whole regiment received the French Croix de Guerre, a medal awarded to soldiers from Allied countries for bravery in combat. So we will always look at as brave. Always. Maybe this is why today's black men are preyed upon by police, easily shot down. And what do they always say? He resisted. Because resistance is an act of what? Bravery. We were always brave. Who were the most famous Harlem Hellfighters? The names of the most famous Harlem Hellfighters were Henry Lincoln Johnson, that's the private, who they termed Black Death after, the dude who used a bolo knife. Needham Roberts, that's the one who he saved, who was injured when he used a bolo knife. His name was Needham Roberts. And James Reese Europe, that's the guy who was the band leader who brought jazz to France. Why were the Harlem Hellfighters important? Their bravery, their bravery during World War One changed the Americans' public's opinion on African American soldiers and helped pave the way for future African American soldiers. You see? You see? You see? So if your son is getting bullied, your son is a little soft, and he needs to be, you know, uplifted, give him some confidence. Teach him about the Harlem Hellfighters and teach him the story of them and how they were honored for being brave and how being brave actually represents black men in American society. When they think of black men, that's what they think of: courage, bravery, intelligence, being trendsetters. Teach them this, family. Teach your black boys about this stuff. Because maybe if he look back into his history and see why it's great to be brave and not to be a coward, not to be afraid, this can influence him. See, that's what we need to use our history for. We need to use our history for progress. And we need to make our history relevant to our children today. Because if we can't apply none of our history into our children's lives or show them the connection, this is why today you have a lot of young black children growing up and they don't want to be black. They don't want to be classified as black. They're afraid to be black men because they don't have any references. You see? Where did the Harlem Hellfighters fight? They fought on the Western Front, notably in the Battle of Chiteau. Chateau Ferry and the Battle of Belleau Wood during the Asani Marnin campaign. Harlem Hellfighters Facts for Kids. Harlem Hellfighter Fact 1. The Harlem Hellfighters was an all-black National Guard unit. So if your son or your daughter want to be a National Guard, we don't have to tell them, oh, that's for white people, because it's not. Because it's not, okay? We need to cut that BS out. We got to stop teaching our children from a hateful, negative, combative standpoint, because it's not true. So as you can see, family, like I said, just go to AmericanHistorama.org. Here it is here. And you could get these facts about the Harlem Hellfighters for your children and let them read it, and maybe they may want to do a report or something. They have all these they have 21 facts here. So stop sharing. Shout out to everybody in the chat, like I said. Let me give some shout outs. Shout out to Soul Alchemy, my sister Akasha. I got you right now, sis. There you go. I appreciate all the support. Shout out to my sister Melanated Neutrina. Good to see you in the building. Shout out to Sheena Waller. Good to see you in the building. Shout out to my brother Black Worlds. Good to see you, bro. Shout out to my brother Suge. As always, big bro, you know what it is. Shout out to Chef JT, my day one brother. Good to see you, bro. Shout out to Simply Deep. Looking for coming through, brother, and showing love. Shout out to Majestic. Looking for coming through, sis. Shout out to my sister Kay Brooks. I hope you feel better, sis. I hope you feel better. And you could catch the playback whenever. But good looking for coming through. Shout out to Suicide. Looking for coming through, bro. Shout out to my sister Krista Taylor, home team. Shout out to everybody else that's watching. Shout out to Black Beauty. Shout out to Jalen. Yeah, you just missed it. You could catch the playback, but I'm gonna go back live and I'm gonna cover some more historians tonight. I'm gonna do one more tonight. Miss Red, shout out to you, Miss Red. Yeah, you could catch the playback, sis. Y'all just coming in, make sure y'all hit that like button. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I'll be back about 20, 30 minutes, maybe before that. But I appreciate all the support and y'all tuning in to the Black History Month series 2018. This is the second historians, the Harlem Hellfighters. The Harlem Hellfighters. So y'all definitely, if y'all missed this, y'all could catch the playback. I appreciate all the support, all the love as always. I'm your host, DS1 Ross. I represent Sheep Stay Sleep TV. Shout out to the Alliance. And I appreciate the love, y'all. I'll be right back with number 3. Peace.